Now, we've had fewer films submitted to the Expo this year. Romily, you run the Machinima Festival at Dragon Con. What's been your experience like?
One of the things that I've seen is a significant drop in the amount of machinima that's being created with engines that I've been screening stuff for most of 10 years. However, I did find a pocket of recent work within the last couple years being done with Source Filmmaker. Yes, and there's fantastic work that's out there. Now, the directors that I've had contact with for Dragon Con, I ended up sending them notes, but a lot of the ones that I sent notes for Dragon Con, none responded. I probably got a response from maybe a quarter, maybe a third of them. And each of those I said, hey, consider submitting to the Machinima Expo as well, but I didn't see any of them come across. Last year, Rob Scott ended up sending his stuff in, and I believe one of his pieces won a jury. So he hadn't done some new work because he's been working on GorillaGong.com, which actually was a source for a large portion of the machinima that I screened at Dragon Con this year. But aside from the shift to Source Filmmaker, and then of course, I guess you guys know my thoughts on machinima.com with how so much of it is live action. And so it's kind of fractured the machinima community as to where is our home? Where can we all hang out? So I think Ross Scott and company are trying to migrate things over to Gorilla Gong. Okay, smoke detector's going off for some reason. Excuse me.
We don't see too many PC games that support mods and machinima these days because the developers don't include the tools we need to create the mods and to create films, and the publishers don't want people creating mods for their games because they want the lifespan of their games to be very limited, so people will buy the sequel next year, and they won't do that if people are still playing last year's game. And so without that encouraging the creativity, there's no support for machinima, and so there aren't that many films being made, which is kind of disappointing, really.
No, sorry. One thing I would argue is I would honestly say it was frustrating to find that the majority of the work that I ended up finding for screening at Dragon Con in previous years was World of Warcraft. And to my knowledge, that hasn't changed, and yet there's not much World of Warcraft machinima that's new and breaking and so on. It's just there was a huge drop off of that despite support for the ability to create it. So
well, perhaps interest in machinima is waning. Maybe some of those machinima filmmakers have moved from machinima over to Unity and are making indie games now.
I've got two counterpoints to that. One is existing machinima makers that I've been screening for years have all just kind of stopped making stuff. And to my knowledge, they've not moved on to game making. And maybe it was just, that they could kind of see that there wasn't as much focus and the community had fractured. But they haven't specifically, with a few exceptions, gone on to game making themselves. But certainly there's an awareness issue. I had a number of folks coming up asking me about machinima, and they were talking about live action stuff. They meant machinima.com live action series stuff, and I'm like, whoa, we're talking two totally different things here. And at that point, the word machinima has become so conflated because of what machinima.com has done with it. I don't know.
Maybe we need a new word.
Gorilla Gong? I don't know.
Yeah.
The other thing too is that, because originally the screening that I was doing was for the Dragon Con Film Festival. and it was in its own section because it couldn't follow the traditional rules of most film festivals, because for those you have to own all of the work, the music, that and with machinima you generally, with the exception of things like Movie Storm, you just can't. And so I think in that sense, people who managed to um, get their skills up on machinima and really wanted to break into something where they could get into movies, into traditional animation or something like that, they found that they couldn't get the screenplay that they could at a film festival with machinima. Um, so maybe some of that is related too.
That's been on my mind as well, because I was thinking about, as much as I like with using Movie Storm, I was thinking about the old days when I was still using games and how much fun that was. And I thought, well, maybe I could do something like that again. And then I realised if I do that, I'll be taking a step backwards because I won't own the film I make.
So, what was your experience screening 124 films? What was it like for you?
Um, I found it would depend on the film. There were some very interesting takes on animation, and I've seen some uses of people made animated films in ways I hadn't actually thought you could do it, and that was quite impressive. On the other hand, there were some films that I found very difficult to watch, and I didn't enjoy those quite so much. But I think the variety was good.
There was certainly a lot of variety. Having come from a strictly machinima based effort in for the last most of decade, aside from my involvement with the Dragon Con Film Festival, which does live action, animation, etc. It's been some time since I've worked with other forms of animation. Generally speaking, I was looking at, does it engage me? Does it anger me? Does it please me? Does it evoke an emotional response? Does it move me in some way? Does it look clean, well done? There's some aspects where I feel out of my depth from a perspective of, I don't understand how all of the types of animation were done, so I don't understand all of the intricacies of what maybe made one piece so much harder and so requiring so much more talent to complete another one. But aside from that, I was looking at things from an end result perspective of, how did it get its message across? What was its message? Whether I liked it or not wasn't particularly relevant. If it ticked me off, well, guess what? It got a response. So that's important to note.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, because we had a very good comedy piece, and I came to it and I was really tired, and I thought, if I watch this now, there's no way I'm going to appreciate the humour in it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to leave this until the next day. And so I did, and then I'm really glad I did that, because I actually enjoyed the jokes and the humour of the film. So, yes. And yeah, I think it's worth. Sometimes you have to take the break just to, if you're not in the right frame of mind to appreciate the film.
One tip that I used when screening the films, while I refuse to read information like the blurbs that are submitted with the films, as well as any kind of information below the film listing, because I want the film to tell me, because generally speaking, audiences aren't going to have a chance to read the blurb. So I want the film to tell me what it's going to tell me. But I would look at how long the films were, and I would judge whether I was going to watch it at that time based on, if it's a 2-minute thing and I'm feeling good, okay, fine. If I've got a whole bunch of, 30-minute, 45-minute ones, I may wait a few days and kind of keep it in the back of my mind of, okay, I've got about 2.5 hours of stuff to screen. I got some time this Sunday afternoon. That will be a good time, assuming, that things going okay. So that would be how I would use that information. And so sometimes there were hiatuses of no screening activity, and then a whole barrage of, I've got enough energy to focus and listen to all these different stories.
Now I've got a question for you. How do you know when a film that you're screening is a jury film?
For me, the thing that told me something was a jury film was when I saw it. I was like, done. Yes, that's jury. And those were the ones that specifically when we were having debates that I said, I'll fight for this one and this one, because they still just say, yep, perfect, beginning to end, love it, love it, love it. So those were the ones, there were other ones where it was like, yeah, I like that. I could see it either way. I'm not going to fight for it to make sure that it stays on jury. So.
The same as Tina, really. I mean, I watch the films, and when you watch a film that's it's a jury level film, you just know it instantly. And it's, for me, it's the kind of film that I know I'm going to want to watch this again, and I can happily watch it many times.
And you can't forget them.
Yeah, and even now, when I look back at previous expos, the jury films are still on my mind. And this year's jury films, I can say that again next year or the year after that. Yeah.
So what were some of your favorite films submitted this year?
This is going to sound terrible, but the name of it slipped my mind. But I know the exact film. Tina, why don't you answer while I look at the name of this film, and I can give it.
I loved Any Which Way. I thought it was short, it was funny, it even had tiny little details that just grabbed me, like the focusing change, that it was like, okay, well, we've got vision issues as well as hearing issues and so, and it was short, sweet, clean, and funny, and I just loved that one. There were other ones that were talking on traditionally touchy subjects, and or disabilities, which there was one deal.
Asperger's? It was Asperger's syndrome?
Yeah, and that was having some friends who have that. It was really eye-opening to be able to put a visual experience to the words that they told me. So those kinds of things, especially, and there were some where it was like, okay, I don't agree with this person's religious views personally. However, what they have to say, they've either done it in an artful way or not. So regardless of whether I agree with what they have to say, how well did they say it? That's the thing for me.
You don't see too many of that. Yeah, I've got the name of the film now. It was El Balsaro, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's the one with the guy on the boat, and he's going on that little adventure.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I just really enjoyed that film so much.
Yes.
And
well, one of my favorite films was Breathe, by Yoshitaka Coppola. I love the way it was designed. I love its use of locations in Second Life. The music is perfect. It's almost avant-garde in a way. I was also very impressed with Teddy's Bowling Alley by Charlie Fasano, a marvelous 3D stop-motion film that just impressed me to all get out. I've got an interview with him later in the expo. Runtime was another big favorite of mine. Of course, I loved Away by Damien Colbeck. There were a lot of films this year that I think were really, really great. Some of the most interesting and varied films I think we've ever received to the Expo. Well, that's it. Thanks a lot, guys, for being a part of this panel, and I look forward to working with you next year. See ya.
Take care.
bye.
Bye.